In this video I will create 3 Halloween and autumn themed cards with beautiful blended backgrounds. You will see how to stamp a large spiderweb. You will see how to stamp and color 2 cute spiders and how to cut or fuzzy cut them out. I used an action wobbler on one card, but I will also show you a version without a wobbler. You will see how easy it is to create a moon, and I will share a few helpful stamping and embossing tips along the way, including what you can do when heat embossing doesn't go quite as planned. Are you ready for another video packed with card making tips? Enjoy watching! Hello, it's CisVolk! Time to enjoy card making with me! In the new Hello Autumn release from Carla Creates by Vaessen Creative, there is this beautiful large spiderweb stamp. As you can see, it is one large stamp in one single piece. It sticks very well to the backing sheet, which is exactly what it is designed to do. Even after being used multiple times, a high quality polymer stamp should still cling well, so I remove it slowly and carefully. It is too large for a clear block, so for this stamp I definitely recommend using a stamping platform. You can also use it in different directions, which makes it very versatile. This Hello Autumn release also includes matching sentiment stamps like this one. Don't be scared, I'm just casting a line. In Dutch, niet schrikken, ik kom even een lijntje uitgooien. That is the sentiment I will be using on one of my cards today. As I mentioned earlier, I will be making 3 cards, and of course these cute spiders will appear on all of them, together with matching Halloween sentiments. Let's get started! When I am planning a card design, I like to use the clear packaging sheets from the stamps. I place them on a piece of cardstock and arrange them roughly the way I want the finished card to look. That gives me a good idea of the layout before I start. But first I'm going to add some color to the background. I am using smooth white watercolor paper. For ink blending I prefer foam tools here because they apply a generous amount of ink quickly. To create a smooth blend between the colors, I keep going back and forth between the lighter and darker shades. Where the colors meet, I use a lighter touch. Distress oxide ink is opaque, so you can keep adding layers until you are happy with the result. For this background I chose rustic wilderness, twisted citron and fossilized amber. At one point you will see me use a small piece of tape. That simply helps prevent fingerprints on the background while I am working. Once the background is finished, I dry it with my heat tool. If you work consistently from the top left corner to the bottom right, you can clearly see the ink becoming darker as it dries. And you may even notice a little steam coming off the paper. After that, I always do a quick check to make sure everything is completely dry. The easiest way to test this is by sprinkling a little white embossing powder over the background. If no powder sticks, the surface is dry. If some powder remains, simply brush it off and dry the background a little longer with the heat tool. We do this because we are going to stamp and heat emboss on top of this background. I also created another background beforehand. For that one I used ground espresso, vintage photo, fired brick, rusty hinge and fossilized amber. It creates a beautiful autumn background that also works perfectly for Halloween. That background has already been dried completely with the heat tool as well. I stamped the spiderweb using Versamark ink. That is a clear ink which works perfectly with embossing powder. The powder I am using is Ranger White Embossing Powder. You could also use clear embossing powder, but then the spiderweb would be much less visible because it would take on the color of the background. Another beautiful option is Ranger Silver Pearl Embossing Powder. It is a little finer and adds a lovely silver shimmer. I will show you an example of that later on. You can use this spiderweb stamp in several different ways, with the center at the bottom or with the center at the top. And there's even a way to use it sideways. I will show you another card later on where I used it with pumpkins. I stamped the sentiment over the spiderweb with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Then I heat emboss it with clear embossing powder by CisVolk. I stamped and colored 2 spiders. One spider was cut out with a craft knife. It takes quite a bit of time, but it gives a very precise result, especially around the tiny hairs on the spider's head. The other spider was cut out with scissors. With both spiders I found it a bit of a shame that I had to cut away the tiny hairs on the legs. If you use scissors, start by cutting around the hairs on top of the head first. That creates some extra space to work with. The short hairs underneath the head can be cut away in one go. After that, you can trim the remaining hairs one by one. I find that to be the easiest method. Any bright white edges can be touched up afterwards with a black marker. This spider will be attached in the simplest way possible, with a piece of thread, and some tape. Look how fun that turned out! I'm really happy with it. And you can easily recreate this idea in different colors, with different sentiments as well. Now I am moving on to the second spider card, using the red-brown background. For this variation I'm also bringing in the Guinea pigs collection. It includes this cute little fly. I will stamp it, heat emboss it, color it, cut it out and add it to the spiderweb. But this time, instead of using thread, I will attach it with a homemade action wobbler. As I often do, I add a little shimmer to the critter with a Nouveau Aqua shimmer pen. I use a dabbing motion so I don't disturb the watercolor ink underneath. Here as well I am adding a few highlights with a white gel pen. For this spider I added 2 extra sparkles to the pupil. Doesn't that look cute? I will briefly show you once more how to attach the action wobbler. I have shown this technique before in other videos. You can find a link in the description underneath this video, and I will also link it at the end of this video. The process is quite straightforward, but if anything is unclear, feel free to ask your questions in the comments below. If your action wobbler doesn't wobble quite enough or sits a little too flat for your liking, simply bend and stretch it a little more. Keep adjusting it until your stamped image sits slightly higher above the card. The more spring it has, the more movement you will get. Here you can see a variation on the same idea, using another blended background and the spiderweb again. This time the spiderweb is rotated by a quarter turn. I embossed it with Ranger Silver Pearl embossing powder, which gives it a beautiful soft silver line. So that is another fun way to use this large stamp. I added tiny white dots to the letters with a white gel pen to make them look shiny. The pumpkins were colored with the same colors I used in the background, so not just orange but also purple, green and blue. For the next card I'm creating something completely different with this fun stamp set. Once again I'm using a blended background, and because I will be working with water, I'm using Florence watercolor paper just like I usually do. Watch along and pick up a few more useful tips. Using a stamping block, some distress ink and water, I created a blotchy pattern on the watercolor paper. This will become the texture of the moon later on. After drying it, I placed a circular mask over it. I made this mask by punching a circle from sturdy masking paper. The area underneath the mask will keep the moon pattern visible. Everywhere else, the new colors will cover the original stain. Distress oxide ink is opaque, which is very helpful for this technique. I start with ground espresso. Then I add a layer of candied apple. I simply blend right over the circular mask. The mask can get covered with ink because I will remove it later, revealing the moon underneath. I go back with the ground espresso to blend the colors together more smoothly. Then I return to candied apple. I keep alternating between the colors until I am happy with the blend. Next comes a layer of rusty hinge and finally tea dye. To check again if the ink is completely dry, I sprinkle a generous amount of embossing powder over the background. If no powder sticks, I know the ink is fully dry. That means the embossing powder will only stick to the stamped image and not to the background. In my stamping platform, I'm using the Waffle Flower Sticky Mat. As you can see, it isn't sticky very well anymore, so I quickly clean it with a little water. Using my finger, I wipe away all the dirt, including embossing powder and anti-static powder residue. Then I dry it with a cloth. And just like that, it is sticky again and ready to use. The stamps I am using on this background are solid stamps. That means they have large filled areas. And stamps like these do not always give a perfect impression the first time. I always rub them gently with my fingers before stamping. For solid stamps, a stamp platform is usually the easiest option because it allows you to stamp in exactly the same place more than once. That way, you can improve any areas that didn't stamp clearly the first time. The spider webs I stamp quickly with a clear block. That is simply faster. And those fine lines usually stamp perfectly in one go. I heat emboss the different elements separately. This helps prevent the ink from drying before I add the embossing powder, and it also reduces the chance of smudges. The embossing of the text "Hi" has not embossed completely opaque. I add an extra layer of white embossing powder. I simply color over the lighter areas with a Versa marker. The embossing powder sticks to those areas, and after heating, the lettering becomes a nice even white. Once it is melted, you can no longer see where the extra layer was added. I noticed that the little spider at the bottom became a bit dull because I added anti-static powder on top of it when I wanted to prep the paper for stamping the white parts. When heat setting the white embossing powder, the anti-static powder sunk in the black spider as well. To make the spider black and glossy again, I color it black with a marker. I color directly over the embossed image. When I heat it with the heat tool, the marker ink blends into the embossing, and afterwards you cannot see that I touched it up at all. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope these 3 cards have given you some fun ideas and useful tips that you can use in your own card making projects. Whether you try one of these cards exactly as shown or use the ideas to create something completely different, I would love to hear what you make of them. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and leave a comment below. I always enjoy reading your messages and seeing what inspires you. If you would like to follow along, you can also find me on Facebook, Pinterest and Instagram. I often share photos of my cards there and every now and then a little extra inspiration as well. And if you enjoy creating with Carla Creates products, feel free to join the Carla Creates Inspiration Facebook group. It is a lovely place to share your creations, exchange ideas and get inspired by other card makers. If you would like to save this video for later or share it with a crafty friend, that would be wonderful too. You will find product information and links in the description underneath this video. When you choose to use those links, you help support my channel at no extra cost to you. And I really appreciate that. Thank you again for spending some creative time with me. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!